So without further ado, we are fortunate to have Carrie Karch and Melody Olson with us today. Carrie leads organizational development, strategic planning, project management, and continuous quality improvement efforts at the Washington Healthcare Authority. She helps ensure that HCA monitors its performance using an outcomes-based management system and takes action to improve when needed. Carrie is currently working on her PhD in leadership studies at St. Martin's University. She has a master's degree in business administration, certificates in change management, black belt in Lean Six Sigma, and actively is working on a DEI certification. Melody Olson is a certified ProSci practitioner and trainer and has been working to get change adopted in state agencies for over 20 years. She has worked on large technology projects, organizational change initiatives, and a host of projects where HCA staff are impacted by changes in technology, processes, and organizational restructuring. She enjoys working on large-scale changes and has recently completed an in-depth coaching certification to expand her coaching role in the agency. So without further ado, take it away, Carrie and Melody.
All right, thank you for that warm welcome and introduction. In the theme of results happen together, we are very excited to share our experience where we join change management with our employee resource group initiatives to develop a more inclusive culture at HCA. As shared, my name is Carrie Karch. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the division director of the Plan and Performance Division at HCA. I'm joined here with Melody Olson, our organizational change manager, and our panel members, Dakota, Fantasia, Kat, Sarah, and Aranzu. We would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and a special thank you for Missy Sterling, who is helping us manage our technology and our presentation, as well as the Results Washington staff, our ASL interpreters, and our closed captioner. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Melody, who is going to moderate our panel discussion today. So Melody, please take it away.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm just going to do a quick sound check. Did everybody hear me okay?
You're good,
Yes.
Melody. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just really pleased to be here today and be part of this panel and appreciate not only the members of the panel that have come to speak today, but all of you who have decided to join us. My name, as Carrie mentioned, is Melody Olson. I use she and her pronouns. And I'm just very excited for you to meet some of our great panel members today. This is a sampling of 14 members of various employee resource groups who are leading from all levels a variety of initiatives that affect our diversity, inclusion, and equity. So the DEI efforts. So these are wonderful individuals who, in addition to their regular work, are driving very necessary and very challenging changes in our agency. Missy, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So a little bit of background about our initiative before we bring in our panel members. Our initiative really was to focus on supporting leaders at all levels to help accelerate and advance the changes that they're trying to make as members of our employee resource groups. Now, you may hear us refer to these groups as ERGs. There are a number of ERGs in the agency, and all of these folks represent different initiatives and different groups looking to drive change. So what we had intended to do through this effort was to support them in a new way, to help them bring change management resources, tools, a framework for them to apply to the changes they're looking to make and help accelerate these efforts. We generally do a certification using the ProSci methodology. It's a 3 to 4 day class that we do internally, but we wanted to tailor this to really help meet these folks where they were. So we increased the time we spent in the classroom together to 5 days. We identified a specific initiative or a piece of their work that they could accomplish in a short period of time. And we provided some additional, what we might refer to as at the elbow coaching for them in other sessions. So all of these folks came to training, came with a specific project and worked on that project over the week with us. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Missy. So as you'll see, we have some great groups working across the agency to make this a more inclusive and welcoming environment. And today, you're going to meet panel members from each of these groups: the multi-ethnic group, our Pride group, veterans, generations, and our recovery synergy group. And I'm just so pleased and blessed to have been able to spend time in the classroom with these folks, because what you're going to hear is what they've learned during the training. But what I gained from hearing from them was just really inspiring in terms of how they're wanting to advance our agency's culture and make it a really truly welcoming and enjoyable place to work. So as we put the training in place, our initial goal was to just bring them a framework and some repeatable processes that they could apply not only to this work, but also to other work that they do in the agency. In addition, we left them with some tools and resources that will help promote learning and ongoing growth. They all walked away from the training with 20 years worth of pro-sci research at their fingertips, online assessment tools and planning tools to really bring a set of strategies and focus to their work. Okay, Missy, let's go on to the next slide. So at a very high level, for those of you who may not be familiar with the pro-sci model, of course, it's one model and we use lots of different tools here at HCA, but the focus of the training was here. We really wanted to focus to help ensure that those leading these efforts had a very clear definition of what success would look like and an understanding of who needed to change the way they work and what did they need to do differently. It might not be process related, it may be changing a mindset or a set of behaviors. This is very complex work. So we spent quite a bit of time looking at the impacts on folks and what we were actually asking them to do differently. We then took them down the path where they did quite a bit of work looking at what was it going to take to achieve success? Who did they need in their corner? Who was the right sponsor? Did they need a broader sponsor coalition? And then what would we do to prepare, equip, and support people through the change? And I think that's what you're going to enjoy most about our panel members is these are folks who are not here to judge, they're here to help people grow, really help broaden their understanding of some very important issues. And then lastly, what do we do to ensure that the change sticks? How do we reinforce the changes we're making? So this should give you a little bit of foundation for the conversation that we're going to have. And Missy, if you'll go to the next slide, I'd like to bring Carrie Karch back into the discussion. As our sponsor, Carrie, I remember you coming to me with this idea. And I just want you to share with the group why sponsoring this activity was so important to you and why this opportunity, why now?
Thank you, Melody. Great question. And yes, I had this idea and I was incredibly curious if we could rethink the way we design our supports for our employee resource groups. We know that change is best adopted when we have change management skills and methodologies applied, and the work that our ERG groups are doing, the staff that are leading this work, is very challenging, as you mentioned. And so rethinking the way that we provide supports to them while they're doing this work, as well as rethinking the way we deliver those supports. So this training, how do we provide this training in a way that is meaningful and impactful for these types of initiatives? And so I was incredibly curious and very excited as we started to engage in conversation with the ERGs and the leads. We discovered a lot of interest. And so I think that passion and interest and the assistance as they lead this work will really come through in the conversation today. I think you're on mute.
Melody, you are muted.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move into the set of questions. And before we do, I'm just really delighted to introduce you to some of my favorite colleagues here at HCA. incredible people in their own right, and leaders of these efforts. They really set the example. So I'm going to ask each of them to quickly introduce themselves and identify for you the project that they brought into the classroom and worked on together, not just by themselves, but with other members from their employee resource group. So Aranzazu, could I have you kick us off and then go to Sarah and Kat?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Aranza Granrose. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a member of the Healthcare Authority Veterans Employee Resource Group. And our initiative is to assist veterans, assisting veterans transitioning to the workplace and bring more veterans into the interview table. And we want us to help them and, help into that transition, and also support the governor's executive order by advising and assisting management on recruitment, retention, and development strategies.
It's great, Aranzazu. Thank you so much for your introduction. Sarah, could you go next?
Hi, I'm Sarah Tunnell. I use she, her pronouns, and the Generations Employee Resource Group worked on a hybrid work environment project. Because the COVID-19 pandemic forced change, we kind of had a bumpy start in the beginning where most everyone was forced home into a telework. But we then really kind of got into some familiar patterns and habits and communication styles. Most of our employees at HCA did leave to telework, and how our staff in the office communicated with staff who were working from home looked essentially exactly the same as if they were teleworking. And so when our conference rooms began to open back up, we did not have an equitable plan for staff interactions in a hybrid work environment where you do have some people working in the office and some people who are working at home, and how they can have successful hybrid meetings where you have that dynamic. And so we had an anonymous volunteer survey go out to HCA staff, and we used the results of that survey, informational interviews, policy reviews, and comments from the annual employee survey to create a list of recommendations for HCA leadership.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, let's go to Kat, then Fantasia and Dakota.
All right. Hi, I'm Kat Cook. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm here representing the Pride ERG. And our project was about increasing the use of gender inclusive language at the agency and building an understanding that gender is not a binary, so we can better connect with all of our customers and employees. So that's sort of where we are.
Thank you, Kat. It's good to see you this morning. Fantasia.
Hello, my name is Fantasia Fatera. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a member of the Multi-Ethnic Resource Group for Employees, or MERGE, and our project, Onboarding to Belong, aims to improve the onboarding process by using mentorship and the new employee checklist as a starting point to infuse diversity, equity, and inclusion and create a sense of belonging in the workplace. This type of onboarding will anchor employees to their work, retain utilizing their strengths, and because they are valued from the very beginning, establish a sense of belonging in the workplace. This project seeks to increase communication with participation in an employee resource group, ensure staff retention, and improve the 5 lowest scores on the employee survey. And the hope is that new employees are mentored into their desk or virtual work while learning about the culture and people of HCA.
Thank you, Fantasia. I just love the name of the project, Onboarding to Belong. It really speaks to the work you're trying to do. And last but certainly not least, Dakota, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dakota Steele, and I am one of the co-leads for Recovery Synergy. And we are working to create a work environment that is oriented towards and supportive of behavioral health recovery. That's inclusive of all those in seeking and supporting, and those who are supporting those in behavioral health recovery by reducing behavioral health stigma and promoting a whole person wellness.
Thank you, Dakota. Well, let's jump into some of our questions. Missy, if you could take us to the next slide. And I would like to kick off this panel question. I'm going to start with Dakota, then go to Kat and Sarah. And the question is, what did you get out of this opportunity?
Hi, thanks, Melody. I think the biggest takeaway I got, and the thing that I learned most about, is that structure is actually a good thing. I like to consider myself a person who was kind of born coloring outside the lines. And although this course, it does provide structure for our project initiatives, it also allows us to have a lot of flexibility and adaptability and put our own flair and our own signature to stuff, and allows you once in a while to have some wiggle room where you can really color outside those lines if you so choose.
We gave you permission. Definitely gave you permission to color outside the lines. And I saw a lot of creativity being infused in the standard processes. So thank you. Kat, how about you? What did you get out of this opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So really one of the things that I loved coming out of this was that I got a set of tools that I can use to gain consensus and make suggestions more palatable and actionable, both for the ERG and also in my day job where I might try to convince people to change health strategies. So it's really got a great application there. And so understanding the steps needed to not only implement change, but also to gain belief in the reasoning for that change. Because if people aren't buying into it, the change is going to die. So those tools have been invaluable to me.
Thank you, Kat. Let's do Sarah, Fantasia, and then Aranzazu. Sarah.
Yeah, so my day-to-day job is a project manager. And so whenever I started at HCA a few years back, I met you, Melody, and I thought, wow, I need to learn more about this and kind of get more tools into my toolbox as a project manager. And so that's what I really took away from this and from this excellent opportunity was I've got more things to use in my day-to-day project management as well. So not just supporting the ERGs, but how I go about my entire work at HCA.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And it is a wonderful partnership between change management and project management. It says you're seeking results and some of the outcomes you desire, as well as all of these ERGs. Having some level of focus on the people side of change is really important. Mm-hmm. Okay, Fantasia, what did you get out of this opportunity?
So for me, it was just really insightful to attend this training with individuals who are in upper management that have experience with creating initiatives and navigating change, as well as representatives from the different employee resource groups. It was just really wonderful to be in the presence and with a group of people who we all have the same goal. We all are striving for equality for everyone in the workplace. I just gained so much knowledge and tools that I can take with me in my personal and professional life on how to better navigate and help others through a change that is happening. It just really helped our team to focus our goals and better define our project, onboarding to belong with specific steps to help guide us as we prepare to move into the next phase in our project.
Thank you. I really enjoyed watching the three of you on your team really gel together, and just the amount of mutual respect and working together. And I could just see when you guys would come out of your breakout sessions, how energized you were working together. Aranzazu, could you kind of tie this one up for us? What did you gain out of this experience?
Well, it gave me the opportunity to work with other group members in this project, and we realized that we were all passionate about this work, despite having different backgrounds and experiences also. So, yeah, it was great just to work, with people who, I don't know, they have the same goals and the same passion.
Great, thank you. Well, let's move on, Missy. We're going to dive a little bit deeper as we go through these questions. So if you could put the next question up. So this is a slide that all of the folks that are in the training are very familiar with. This is a slide where what you will see is at the end of each day of training, folks would focus on what they learned, and they would share that. If they selected the square, they would let us know that they'd learned something that squared or agreed with their thinking. The angle was something that gave them a new perspective. And the circle was something that helped close the loop or bring them full circle. And then lastly, if they chose the triangle, they would report back something that they were going to change as a result of the training. So I thought I would bring that back today and ask folks, what key learning did you come away with? And let's start with Kat this time and then go to Dakota.
Sure thing, Melody. So as the training as a whole, I would say I'm identifying with the triangle for this. And it's because I'm an analyst. And so to convince me of anything, if you give me reputable data and cold logic, I'm yours. And so that's what I tried to do to manage change. But lots of people are not like that. And so the ADKAR model gave me a way to really get everyone on board with a change, not just people who think like me, which I think is really the essence of both DEI and change management.
Thank you, Kat. Let's go to Dakota and then Sarah. Dakota, what key learning did you come away with? What shape would you choose?
I think our group chose the angle, and that's because our project kind of started around the theme of words matter around recovery. Mm-hmm. And the further we got in the process, we realized we were thinking really too small and very narrowed lensed around behavioral health recovery in general. And we needed to really expand the project through a larger lens of recovery culture, creating recovery culture within the agency. And we've since realized that rather than this being project-based, with a lot of consulting with your team, we realized that this is really an initiative-based project. And so we're moving towards that to create really the change that needs to happen within the agency as a whole.
Thank you, Dakota, for sharing that, because I think that sometimes we start off on something that is very important to us, and it has, very deep rooted changes that need to be addressed. And it takes a coalition of sponsors to help guide that change. So I think elevating this even further is really going to be an important step to move this work forward. Thank you for that. Let's go to Sarah and then Aranzazu.
Yeah, so I chose the angle because coming into this work, my new angle or new perspective was around a sponsor coalition. In traditional project management, you have a project sponsor. You have somebody that you go to who kind of has the authority to help you across all aspects of the project. But with the sponsor coalition, we are focusing on that people side of change with a person in a certain area who can help with either communications or IT support. And so building a coalition is a new angle that I just absolutely loved that idea.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think one of the things that we all came to recognize during the class is that having the right sponsors, the right mix of sponsors, the people who are really passionate about this work and have the authority to carry it forward is so important. So thank you for that. Okay, Fantasia and then Aranzazu.
So I chose the angle. And I learned that change happens with people as change practitioners, that we're like a director of the play, working through with and through others. I learned that understanding how having buy-in will set the stage for the change you are trying to achieve. And I learned about sponsorship and about how having active, visible sponsors is the single greatest contributor to the success of a change initiative, and about nature of resistance and how to manage it. I learned to label behavior, not the people.
Thank you, Fantasia. Those are some really great points. I'm going to close up this question with Aranzazu.
Yeah, we actually chose the angle because it gave us a new perspective to embrace change. We use actually the ADKAR model to create awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement, the building elements for creating change from the human perspective. And then when you see a veteran, you realize that they're people just like you and me.
Thank you, Aranzazu. And are you a veteran yourself?
I'm a spouse. My partner is a veteran.
That's awesome. So I think it's great that we have the veterans and members of their family all serving on this committee, because you do bring different perspectives and such to this work. So thank you all. Let's go even one step deeper, Missy. Let's go to the next question. And I want to spend a good portion of our time here. What changes in mindsets, attitudes, and beliefs are needed to achieve success? So I heard a lot from you all during the class about this being a significant area to focus on. And Kat, let's start with you again at the top on this one, and then we'll go to Sarah secondly.
Sure thing. So essentially, this is the whole ball game and what we're trying to do in our project for Pride, and it's currently in process, but we need to we need to allow folks to have a total paradigm shift for how they've been socialized to deal with gender from infancy. And so to do that, it takes a lot of time and attention and building of comfort. And it's essentially, I don't want to say reprogramming, but it's getting folks to get on board with this change by changing how they view the world their entire lives. And without any kind of change management strategy, I think that's going to be crucial for DEI efforts, because all of these are about deeply rooted unconscious bias that we have to change. And to get someone who is, sorry, I can go on forever about this. I should give someone else.
No, I think you should. Okay. Tell us what's on your mind. I can feel your passion coming through.
Thank you. So to tell someone who is, older, who's been viewing gender as man, woman, the end for 50, 60, 70 years, and saying, no, now it's a spectrum. Now we have to do they, them pronouns. And I know it goes against the grammar rules that you had hammered into you in school, but it's okay. And so it's you need constant streams of education and empathy in order to get this done. And that's what I think the ProSci model really gives you. It gives you the framework to create that in a professional setting. And so I think that's invaluable.
Thank you, Kat. And that's one of the things that I see members of your team do so well also, is you do provide a lot of grace along with the education, and that I think really helps quite a bit. Let's go to Sarah and then Dakota on this one. Sarah, what changes in mindset, attitudes, and beliefs did you find in your work with a hybrid work environment?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges I think that we may have faced is, and this is kind of universal with change in general, but we as employees who have gone through this COVID-19 have maybe felt out a little burnt by we've had so many rapid changes so fast in terms of technology platforms, and most people are teleworking. And so to then go into a hybrid work environment, we had to kind of create a very slow, reassuring process that's very patient, that didn't introduce change too fast, especially new technology changes or updates, more equitable processes. And so the ProSci model, the change management model, really gave us that framework to address those individual needs of the staff in a slow, methodical process, so that they are comfortable and on board. We have to kind of get the entire agency on board with this. And so making staff comfortable and being patient and with a slow rollout is kind of how we've gone through it, to help with those that burnt out feeling that staff may have.
Thank you, Sarah, because I think many of us across state government have felt change saturation. Not only with the work that we're doing, but then this level that affected us all personally in terms of how we work, where we work, how we engage, what tools we use to engage. And I think that, seeing the shifts in mindset, attitudes, and beliefs, even about the fact that people would flock back to work as soon as they were free to do so. So I think that lots of adjustments, lots of people dealing with change around that one as well. Yes.
We actually have a question in relation to this, if you don't mind.
Great, let's pose it. Yes.
And it is, how does one overcome change fatigue when we don't have a choice about when we implement some changes?
Well, I think that's a great question, and one that I could also ask any of the panel members to raise their hand if they'd like to. But I think with change fatigue, the most important thing we focused on during our class was sizing the change appropriately, because there are always lots of activities that you could choose to do. And taking the time up front to understand the most significant impacts on people and identifying strategies to deal with those, and not necessarily bringing the whole full meal deal of change management and all the activities that you could possibly throw at something. It's being very deliberate and thoughtful about the activities that are needed to ensure that, you know, we are advancing the changes while making the best and highest use of people's time and tolerance for another change. That's a great question, and thank you for posing it. Okay, Dakota, you know, with the topic that you're focusing on recovery synergy, what changes in mindset, attitudes, and beliefs do you believe are needed for success?
Thanks, Melody. I think there's both cultural and societal changes that need to be addressed with our initiative, particularly surrounding the use of the language, seeing someone as a person before their behavioral health challenge, looking at those challenges through strength-based lens, educating folks about stigma reduction, and creating a culture that really honors our challenges and our differences and our uniquenesses, rather than using them to continually other one another.
Thank you, Dakota. You used an interesting term I'd like to follow up on. I hope maybe you could give us a couple of examples. I learned so much from you in the class around this, but you used the two terms that I noted, strength-based and person-focused. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what that has meant to you personally, what you mean by that for our agency?
Sure. Person first is seeing that person. It's seeing me before my diagnosis. So it can be outside of behavioral health. It can be physical health. It's seeing that person first and honoring who that person before you is before you put a label on them. And then strength-based is really creating those. We all have uniquenesses if we're in recovery for a very long time. Most of us got them in very different ways than others. I was a street dependent person for a very long time. However, I learned resilience and I learned resourcefulness through that experience. And so those are strengths that I bring forward through what people might seem as a really negative experience, but it had a positive outcome because it really gave me resilience and resourcefulness for my life forward.
Well, thank you for adding that clarification, and also just for sharing something so personal to you. That really helps me understand what strength-based language really means in terms of the real person. And I think your comment about person-focused really fits with our agency culture in that we are trying to treat the whole person in terms of healthcare. So thank you for that addition. Aranzazu, could you tell us in the area that you're working in with veterans, what changes in mindset, attitudes, and beliefs are needed for success?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Melody. So when we were preparing our change management strategy, we had to firstly assess the scope inside of this effort. Also, we had to determine who was going to need to do their jobs differently. And also we need to consider the level of readiness of the staff that were going to be impacted by this change. Because change starts with people, right? So it was our belief, and it is our belief, that changing our mindsets, attitudes, and beliefs needed to happen from three areas: the hiring managers, the recruiters, and the candidates. And we need to do this by increasing awareness, using the first element of the ADKAR model. Also, we need to be mindful of potential barriers, like, for example, hiring managers. They maybe have a predetermined idea or a stereotype, or have unconscious bias of the veterans applicants. So creating awareness was key.
Thank you. And what was one of the strategies? I loved some of the strategies that you had, particularly in and around screening veterans and the interview panels by bringing in others to the process. Could you just quickly kind of explain what that strategy looked like in terms of an action you wanted to take?
Sure. We wanted also to look across the agency and see who was actually a veteran themselves, and just partner, just kind of like have a battle buddy, right? With also the new, just this one, it was just for retention, but also to have that connection with a veteran, so, just to share the experience. Also, we were also, having maybe developing some trainings for the terms, military terms, that it would have been helpful for recruiters and hiring managers, and bringing maybe, those veterans that they already have experience going through the interview process and they were already successful working for an agency, just bring them also to the interview panels in case that they needed to clarify some other questions.
I love that idea. I love both the idea of having them be able to serve as translators and ask follow-up questions if a veteran is having difficulty crosswalking what their skills are in the military to the skills of the job they're applying for. And this term and strategy of battle buddies is something that in the military, I've learned that when someone is moved to a new location, that there's somebody there as a battle buddy to greet them, to introduce them, to just kind of bring them into the fold and support them. So I love bringing that idea into HCA. And lastly, Fantasia, what changes in mindsets, attitudes, and beliefs are needed to achieve success as it relates to onboarding to belong?
So when thinking about our initiative, our team was able to highlight several factors that can cause barriers when people work together who are coming from different spaces. Some of these barriers include the way we communicate, for example, microaggressions, creating psychological safety, retention, how we think about retaining the workforce, and just looping back to the psychological safety. We just think that's just so important, and us being members of the MERGE, ERG, Multi-Ethnic Resource Group for Employees, it's just wonderful safe space that's created where we can talk out our differences or ask questions or just share things that we might be going through. And the idea of having those opportunities be presented from the very beginning is really what our project is about, just to bring more, just shed more knowledge and light on the different employee resource groups to new hires, because we're losing people who are experts in their field, who have historic knowledge of how the work gets done. And we need to ask ourselves as an agency, are people surviving or thriving here? And when individuals are onboarded with a sense of belonging, they can freely share concerns, ask questions, and are encouraged to bring their unique experiences and ideas to the table. So just once again, we're just really excited to be working on this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Missy, let's go ahead and move to our next question. And this question, many of you have mentioned that you learned a lot about sponsors or key influencers. And I'm going to go back up to the top of the list again. This time I'm going to go with first with Kat and then with Sarah. How do you plan, or what steps have you taken to really build support of key sponsors and those we know as key influencers?
Yeah. Actually, we're very lucky in both our sponsor coalition, because our sponsors are from HR and communications, which are the two big lifts for this project about gender inclusive language. And so that's been incredibly lucky for us. And we've also got really great support within the agency for this project. The Pride ERG has had folks from the customer service teams at the agency reaching out, asking for training on how to appropriately address our trans customers. customers. And so we're very lucky that there's a demand and support. So I feel like some other folks on this panel might have more key facts because I have a bird's nest on the ground.
That's awesome. Well, I know that you've worked hard though also to build that and to ask specifically what you needed from those sponsors. And we can maybe talk a little bit more about that as we go through the panel. Yeah. Aranzazu, how about you? How and did you guys go about building support for your sponsors? And what does your sponsor coalition look like?
Okay, so we created a knowledge base for awareness and desire in this initiative, and it is supported by the Healthcare Authority Veterans Employee Resource Group sponsor and the HR director. Actually, our executive sponsor, his name is Travis Cherry, and he's the Deputy Chief Information Officer. And he's a leader and he's a veteran himself who understands what it is, right, to be a veteran since he has made that transition to the civilian world himself. So we feel very, very fortunate just to have Travis and this group and, you know, his support, definitely. And we also, you know, thinking, you know, and one of the things that we went through, we wanted just to be transparent also and share the work that we are doing, and especially this initiative through this channel and, you know, through our organization.
That's great. And I think having people with lived experience making this transition from a military career and a very successful military career to a successful experience in a completely different culture, having someone who has transcended that as one of your primary sponsors, I think is really, really important. And I know in our director, Robin Vasquez, you also have very strong support as she oversees really the hiring processes. So I think that sounds like a great team. Let's go next to Dakota. How do you build, or how did you go about building support of your sponsor?
Thanks, Melody. Well, since we have shifted our focus to a more broad-based, we're kind of in the process of really accessing what we need in a sponsorship, and we're really looking at building a really solid, broad-based array of sponsors, particularly those who have no knowledge of behavioral health recovery. And then we're aiming to kind of look, you know, hit them head, heart, and then give them marching orders, and that's kind of our focus right now.
So the whole, your comment about giving them marching orders is so important, because one of the things that we've talked about as a group in our sessions is that we have a lot of executives who have sponsored projects for years, and they know what a good sponsor is when they're sponsoring a project. They're typically focused on getting a project done on time, on budget. They know that they need to resource that. They know that they need to make decisions. Sponsoring a change takes a different mindset and a different set of skills. It's about being out there and being actively and visibly supportive of the change. It's talking about the change. It's helping to build that coalition, bringing in other leaders and key influencers. And they play a very strong role in communication. So sometimes our managers don't necessarily know exactly what we need from them as a sponsor of change. And what I have found in my experience at the Healthcare Authority is if I just outline the activities, the actions that I need them to take, they are more than willing to step up and do those things. So when you say give marching orders, it's really, you know, about outlining what are those key activities that they can help with that will help advance this. So thank you for that, Dakota. Fantasia, do you want to go next?
I apologize, I'm unmuting myself.
It's okay. How are you going to go about building support of your sponsor?
So for our project team, when we were thinking about who to ask if they would like to be our primary sponsor of Onboarding to Belong, Taylor Linke came into mind because she's just a champion of the DEI work. and really is just passionate about moving the needle with DEI work. So when we reached out to her, she was, of course, just so willing and was like, of course, I'll be your sponsor. And so going forward in for our project, we are going to have regular meetings to engage with her and also other key influencers to discuss project updates and progress, reiterate key messages, ask and answer questions, share successes, and give and receive feedback. We'll also assist her and other key influencers with scheduling activities, action plans, prepare material for our primary sponsor, involve our sponsor in hands-on work to show visible support, drafting communications regarding our project to go out in email on Insight HCA and SharePoint, and create opportunities for our sponsor to be active and visible in all staff meetings.
So it sounds like you really covered those bases and given a lot of thought to the activities. Sarah, I'm going to have you close out this section because I know who your sponsor is of this initiative. And then I think I'd like some feedback from our hosts, whether we should continue with our last question or whether we should open up for question and answers. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it to you first.
Yes, so Carrie Karch, who is one of the presenters this afternoon, was our project sponsor. And she's been a great connector. So when we're trying to build this sponsor coalition, we do need support from folks across some different disciplines. We have training that will have to be done, IT, communications, facility staff who oversee the conference rooms, just basic managers and those types of staff. And so we are meeting with HCA leadership in November to present give them our presentation and our recommendations and kind of give them their assignments also to talk about how we need them to show up with the work.
Thank you, Sarah. Missy, in the essence of time, let's move through the last couple of slides so that we do have time to answer questions. So I think we've talked a little bit about that. Let's go to the next slide, if you don't mind. I'd like to just kind of bring this a little bit full circle in terms of just a summary of our effort and what you've heard from folks today. Again, this is an opportunity that any agency has to be able to support leaders at all levels. My colleagues that you've heard from today are definitely leaders in my eyes, and the work that they're doing to advance change is so incredibly important to our culture. This is also an opportunity to help them accelerate their efforts, to be really laser focused on what they want to do, who they need to support them, and that building of coalitions. That couldn't be more important. This cannot be done by one or two people in a committee driving all the work. We need to be able to build that support and reach out to those who have the authority and the ability and the credibility, to move change forward. We did feel like we really met our learning goals based on what folks came into the session wanting to learn. There's a little bit of data there for you, but I think that not only did we meet their learning goals, but we learned a lot from them too, in terms of what they were trying to achieve and how we might be able to support them. I also see a really good use of the tools post-implementation. I see people really scaling those readiness activities appropriately, which is one of those strategies we talked about earlier when folks just face so much change saturation, and these changes still are important and need to move forward. Missy, let's go to the next slide. We close this up. So what we really want to continue to do is those of us in Carrie's shop, myself, Missy, and others are really here to provide at the elbow support. And we want to continue this growth in moving from doing good change management or great change management on individual projects and initiatives to just making change something that our agency excels at and is really comfortable even further. And that is going to require continued growth, continued attention to not only building capabilities in folks like you've met today, but just building in the structures and the processes at all levels So we are in the process of really auditing or sizing up our own change management maturity and identifying tactics continue our growth. Missy, let's go. I believe we might have one more slide.
We do not.
We do not.
Questions.
So I know, Missy, you have some questions that maybe you've been able to monitor. I'd love to be able to take a couple of those if we could.
We certainly do. I'm going to start with one directed towards the project presenters. So I will highlight those panel members here in just a moment. The question is, assuming there have been conversations about the lessons learned from this project or these projects, are there voices or communities that might be missing from the conversation that you realized are not represented?
That's a great question. These folks are used to having me call on them. I'm going to give folks a chance to just raise their hand if something comes to mind.
Kat, go for it.
Okay, so that was actually a conversation we had a lot about on our own project, because quite frankly, we had 3 folks who were members of the community, but not members of the trans community, putting this project in place. And so we did a lot of reaching out to our resources and doing things, and it's still in process, but that's been a big concern for us. Also, like many activities within the queer communities, we wind up with a lot of loss of our communities of color within the LGBTQ+ community. And so we're looking at doing additional iterations of this project. So this is the baby step. Then we move into doing a little better. And then we move into healthcare language. And so we're looking at it as version 2.0 will build on what we've got. So we can at least get started fixing it.
That's great. Thank you, Kat. Missy, did you have another question, or was there another question?
Melody, do you mind answering that question from your perspective as a change manager within HCA?
You know, this group has exposed me to so many needs across the department. And I think that one of the areas that perhaps I have given thought to since the training and in terms of lessons learned, I can't say that there's necessarily a group that I think is missing or that I'm aware of is missing. But I think the work that Dakota spoke of around recovery and the challenges of recruiting people to come on board into a voluntary group like the employee resource group. I think about the challenges and the barriers because I might not personally have a recovery, have a lived experience myself. I may have a member of my family who I'm trying to support and want to be a member of the group. But I think there are also, folks may have fears about joining a group like this that folks may make assumptions about them. So I think even though we have a broad group of topics and different audiences we focus on, I think there's always opportunities to expand those, but I also think we need to think carefully about how do we bring folks in a way that is safe, where they can add to the conversation and learn from the conversation.
Wonderful, thank you, Melody. This question I'm going to direct towards Carrie, so I will spotlight you, Carrie, just as that reminder there. This question is, I'm curious about the opportunity. How did this present itself to the group, and how did the group select themselves? How was this conducted? How did it form?
I was just trying to type a quick note into that question as I saw it in the chat. So each ERG has 2 leads, and I worked with the leads of each of the groups to identify 2 or 3 staff members that were leading current initiatives within their employee resource group, and wanted to know, one, if those projects would benefit from this, and if the staff themselves would benefit from this. And so it was an ongoing conversation. The idea for this pilot came up about a year ago, and it took us several months to identify the different staff and figure out sort of what that training would look like and when we could schedule it. So they do come across from all different positions of the agency and represent all of our different programs. And the work that they're doing many times would be considered non-traditional the way we think about our projects. And so they would not necessarily come to this training as a result of their position. This opportunity is being presented as a result of their engagement in trying to lead our organization to have a more inclusive environment.
Thank you so much, Carrie, Melody, and panel. This was a tremendous session. I know that I personally was really interested in your experience going through this, and I've gained so much myself, and I know the rest of our participants did as well.